Hello and welcome to this morning's Talk at 10. We hope, like all of us at West London Business, that despite the immense challenges that continue to swirl around us, you're looking forward at least somewhat to a bright new year. Talk at 10 today comes to you with an update on a bold proposal, the West London Innovation District, first proposed in the West London Alliance's Build and Recover Plan. The idea has been developed further by the West London Business and partners at the Blue Skies Conference in November 2020. At the conference, we were delighted to receive a vast range of positive input on the proposal, and over the last month, work has continued to scope out the plans. At West London Business, we believe if we get the delivery right, the Innovation District presents an opportunity for the sub-region's economy to bounce back more competitively than ever before. To reintroduce the concept and bring alive the opportunity over the next hour, I'm delighted to be joined by our expert panel. Seema Malhotra, Member of Parliament for Feltham and Heston and co-chair with me of the West London Innovation District. Phil Davies, co-founder and commercial director of Magway. Toby Kress, Managing Director at Central Research Laboratory and Programme Director for BusX. Adele Charles, HR Business Partner at Donata. And Alan Hayes, Sales and Managed Services Director at Donata. Throughout the programme, my colleague James will be monitoring your questions, so please keep them coming in via the chat. And please note, to be able to do this, you'll need to be logged into YouTube with a Google account. As always, please don't forget that the West London Business Support Helpline is live, waiting to take your calls on 020 8607 2500. And thank you, as always, to the Better Futures programme, who kindly support our Talk at 10 webcasts. Better Futures is the Mayor of London's flagship programme to create a clean tech cluster in London. If you're wondering how to apply for Better Futures, in order to be eligible, you need to be an SME, have a London address, have or be about to develop a clean technology. That's any product or service that has a good impact on the environment. And you should have a balance sheet of no more than 43 million euros. So if all of that resonates, you're interested in business support in the clean tech space, then please reach out to my colleague amelia.grant@westlondon.com to find out more. So let's get down to business. On the programme today, we're going to kick off with a bit of an introduction to how we're currently going about shaping the West London Innovation District. Then we'll be exploring just a flavour of some of the exciting business opportunities that are bubbling away and we see feeding into and leveraging the Innovation District platform moving forward. And then finally, we're going to hear a bit about the CRL, the home for the Innovation District as it moves forward. So first of all, a huge welcome to the panel. Great to have you with us this morning. As I always do at the top of the hour, I'm really kind of keen to hear from you. What lockdown is currently feeling like for you and colleagues, and perhaps looking out internationally as the world has changed in the past 24 hours with a change in US presidency. Is that lifting your mood or creating new concerns about the future? Seema, if I can turn to you first of all, how are things for you in sunny Feltham?
Well, look, Andrew, firstly, thank you very much. And it's an absolute pleasure to join you. I'll just share, just a voice about lockdown, really. I do feel for many employees who are, working at home, again, longer than they thought, and how difficult it is also for those with family, young children, to be also looking after. I think I just find ways to stay connected, find ways to stay positive. I think it's much harder this time round than was sort of the summer months, because you're sort of locked indoors. So keeping mood positive is really important. I think for also productivity and well-being.
It does feel now. It does feel like a long haul, doesn't it, as we kind of go into yet another lockdown. Sort of got to dig deep once again.
But I think we can be optimistic about what America is currently bringing the world.
Brilliant. You may imagine you may come back to that thought later. If I can bring in Adele, for you and Alan, of course, beavering away at the airports. What's life like at Heathrow at the moment? Because it's obviously been a very tough period.
It has, yeah. It's definitely been tough. It's been turbulent. So there's been travel corridors, no travel corridors, testing, no testing. So we have to adapt. We've had to be so agile and wake up and find out, okay, today we have to do this, or today we need to do that. So it's been a real turbulent time, and we've had to be at peace with the fact that tomorrow won't look how we planned it to when we went to bed the night before. It's definitely, you have to accept that. In terms of the lockdown and some of the terminal being closed, and Gatwick Airport has been shut twice. In terms of our operation, we've closed that operation down twice since March. I've said before, I almost feel guilty when I'm there that the lights are on for me, you know. So it's quite an odd and eerie place to be. Gatwick, it's a community, and then in terms of Heathrow, they've had, as I say, many changes. So we've looked at focusing on engaging with our staff, and culture and engagement has been the key for us to get us all through lockdown. We've got a mix of staff that are furloughed and not furloughed, so it's about making sure we're in touch with all of them.
But for those of you still on site and sort of keeping the business ticking over, echoey spaces as you stroll the halls of Heathrow at the moment.
Yeah, if your pass doesn't work airside, you know, it's a bit worrying to try and get back out again. So.
I bet. Now, Alan, if I can turn to you, how have you been surviving lockdown?
Yeah, like most people on the panel, a lot of home working and a lot of change at very, very short notice. You know, as Adele said, the lights are on in our Heathrow unit. We are still servicing flights daily, but where we'd be normally passing out 35,000 meals a day, we're in the hundreds. And you know, the demand for flying changes day by day. There can be 40 passengers on one flight, 300 on the following day, and then the following day be a cargo flight. So there's a lot of there's a lot of agility and change at short notice required at the moment for the small workforce that's not out on flexi furlough.
Yeah, it sounds like very spiky patterns that you're describing there. Phil, I think you are on site today in your sort of research lab, if I can describe it that way, in Northwest London. How have you been getting through the latest lockdown?
Well, my co-founder Rupert loves modelling and mathematics, and he's been following it sort of, you know, religiously on a day-to-day basis. I think that we anticipated a second lockdown. Everyone was set up for remote working. We are optimistic in the respect that we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. Innovation has come out of previous downturns. I think everyone needs to be sort of mentally strong. We're encouraging everyone to get out, do exercise, where they can. It's tough with home learning. I've got a couple of my kids with me today in the facility, trying to stop them from killing each other. And we, personally just feel relatively lucky. I feel for businesses that through no fault of their own, I mean, you can be the best airport in the world, but if people aren't flying, that's tough. So I would say we're optimistic and looking at previous downturns, we need to be innovative and we need to be bold and come up with new solutions to address the challenges that we face nationally and internationally.
As you say, Phil, so often it does feel like a bit of a roll of the dice as to whether you sort of found yourself in a business that has been struck by externalities beyond your control, or whether you have been and indeed able to keep going through this crisis. Toby, over in Hayes, how are you and all your members keeping going day to day through these tough times?
Yeah, morning, Andrew, and the rest of the panel. It's been really interesting for us because obviously we work with startups, and so for them, they are in a really tough position because they're seeing contracts cancelled, and that hits the small company hard. But at the same time, they're really well positioned to respond to what's going on around them. So we've actually had quite a lot of our members who have changed their business model over the last 6 months to respond to the pandemic, whether that is through engineering and creating things like air purification systems, or in medtech, or even kind of consumer devices. So we've managed to stay open. I'm actually in our space today. We have, help people building physical things. So we have people doing batch production and using our workshops here. And so those who need to have been able to carry on innovating and getting their products developed.
That's fantastic to hear, and I'm sure you went through all the rigmarole at the start of the crisis of having to make the workplace COVID-19 safe, and making sure you keep following those rules to today.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to turn to our first theme of the morning, and I'm going to bring Seema back in. Feltham and Heston, of course, one of the most economically impacted constituencies in the country by coronavirus, in no small part because of the difficulty that the Heathrow area's economy finds itself in with the move just before Christmas, from tier 3 to 5 and space of a week. Now travel corridors closed. The result, of course, a deep economic shock to one of Britain's otherwise most thriving locations. With all that kind of on our minds, we've of course turned, Seema, to what comes next, and what's come through all those conversations is this concept of the innovation district. I wonder whether you can run us through what the innovation district involves. And I think we're going to bring up some slides as you go, just to make it that bit easier for viewers to navigate this new concept. We're going to bring up, Seema, the very first slide now, I think.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry to cut across you, Seema. It's the it's the ambition slide. I'm hoping we're gonna get, or the quintuple helix.
If the ambition slide, I think the ambition slide was the first one. Maybe I'll just say a few words while we're sorting the slide out. Do you want to go to the ambition one? I think there was before that. That's great. Look, I'll just say a couple of words at the beginning. I'm very grateful to you for organising today. I know many have been at the Blue Skies conference, but some of those on the webcast today may not have been. Just in terms of a couple of words of context, I mean, we know that the pandemic has brought this absolute devastation to jobs and businesses in the aviation industry. And on the latest figures, the universal claimant statistics show that Feltham and Heston is the 9th highest constituency in the country for households on universal credit, and that's those who are job seeking as well as those who have seen a loss of income through loss of hours. And rebuilding our economy, our local economy, we know is absolutely going to require new thinking and new ambition. That's the reason why we came together to think about how we respond to this economic impact and think again, reimagine what it means to be a global hub and how we can use those assets that we have to work together in a different way across maybe the boundaries and silos that we've been in before, with a new sort of sense of how we can drive innovation and future growth. And it recognised as well that the future of transport and is going to really be impacted by green growth as well as impact of sort of digital and virtual technologies. We look to sort of decarbonise the sector as well. So just in terms of that context, I'm looking for the slides gone or coming back. I I can't see that. There's the slides.
We've got ambition up, and then we're going to move to the quintuple helix.
Great, yeah. So I can see the ambition now. In terms of that context and the sense of ambition, we wanted a new platform through which, we see companies, industry as a whole, supply chains, research institutions, and government come together in a much more coherent way to help drive that innovation with a growing sense of shared purpose. And what we've actually kind of termed it is looking to become the Silicon Valley of aviation that will absolutely network people locally, across our city, and also across the UK, as a base from which we also network for innovation internationally. We are looking to I think the working title is the London West Innovation District. And I think we'll go through how we'll be able to work together and what opportunities there might be, thinking about where there could be opportunities for AI to play a part with new products and services, how we might think beyond where we've seen innovation to date, as well as innovating individual companies. What we've got a great opportunity to do is to think about our supply chain and how we can work together and look to maybe lever in much more investment into the area by having shared projects and ways in which we can come together to develop them and then to implement them in a sort of live environment in the Heathrow context. Can we move on to the next slide? I'll just try and work through. Brilliant. So this is just to try and encapsulate a model, and this model is one that quadruple or quintuple, it depends on just whether you add in the sort of environmental context as well, but it is a model that's used in innovation economics. It's sort of moving on from the sort of 1990s and the 2000 millennium kind of talk of knowledge economy, and really recognizing that the players and the stakeholders need to be part of our system and how the whole system is working. It's been very much the frame in which we developed the BusX conference as well, and how we saw the West London Alliance also bring together partners in developing that both a strategy and sense of shared purpose about how we move forward to rebuild our economy and think about what we're creating for the future and what new opportunities we can try and develop. So this is a model that other innovation districts across the UK have also recognised as being important to success, because it brings the key players together who have got both a stake or an investment, or who are going to be critical as an important voice, whether it's politics and policy makers, and think that about sort of industrial strategy, an investment in economic development projects in different ways. You've got civil society as well, and I think one of the things that the Innovation District also recognises is we've got to have a place-based response that brings in the community and society in a new way. And then we've got sort of industry and business and research institutions. If we can smooth the way and speed up the way in which we all work together, it will really deliver those innovations through to kind of commercial and investment outcomes that will make a huge difference for sort of medium to long term jobs and growth as well. Should we move on to the next slide?
So I think the CRL map.
The CRL map. So that's great. Well, look, this is just I think just such a wonderful sort of kind of way of depicting what we're looking to be, because whilst we, I know Toby will be talking about CRL, which are incubating the innovation district as it begins its life, but recognizing that a bit differently to other innovation districts that are often smaller in location, that we've got a sort of West London area in which our research institutions, our larger businesses span around that sort of both the sort of half of London going into West London, but also that donut around Heathrow that is very much represented by the West London business area as well. And in our vision, that in our vision got what is more, I'll talk a little bit more about that, like a mega district, which recognizes it will have ways of connecting, but have a central home that is a place through which those partnerships, the connections between the different parts of the helix will be able to connect, and a culture of innovation building on the work of the CRL already, which has a great culture and support for entrepreneurship. How we'll bring in something that will be able to be sort of deeper and more systemic for our aviation sector and sort of logistics supply chain. Should we move forward? So thinking again about what will be different, this sort of mega district where, which is much more of an environment for innovators and entrepreneurs, very much in the sort of way in which we had, kind of discussion about what the future could be, where there might be ideas being developed in one organization that could be accelerated by partnerships with others, and how we're looking to, be leaders in realizing what is the sort of national goals and strategy around the green economy, green circular economy, how that might also align with some of the work of sort of the mayor as well. And we've had some really good engagement from City Hall that is developing, and what that means also for local economies. So, Hounslow, other boroughs have done their own local recovery plans. Heathrow has also got its recovery plan. But how we make sure that we're bringing together, and the whole is much greater than the sum of parts, and the pathways to innovation, how an idea travels through to become to get the investment, get the development, get the networks, get the partnerships, be supported to be going into a test environment, be able to be rolled out, having a streamlined way in which we're all working together on that is itself attractive to investors and new companies that might want to come and locate themselves here because of the environment that they'll be part of.
And I think as well, just on that final slide, Seema, which I think Joel is going to bring up now, also, of course, highlights the emphasis of critical links into the education system.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So I'll just finish with that, because the link, when we're talking about civic society as well, and the links into the education system, learning from what's worked well, good practice elsewhere, that if you want to look at who's going to be doing, the masters, the PhDs, the research leads in the future, they're going to be at school now. And how are we making sure that we're really thinking ahead into the future, and investing in those links with our schools, our colleges, HE, taking advantage as well, being players and drivers as well of, the new paper on FE that's come out today. Our working together will be able to input in as well into how the government develops some of these policies. We want them to work for our area too, and this is a strong way in which we can participate with, credible and reliable and evidence-based information to help shape government policy, as well as how we'll be able to implement around.
Thank you, Seema, an immensely helpful sort of overview of where the thinking is now at. As you touched upon, the title is very much a working title. Whilst today's programme we've described it as West London Innovation District, we are now reflecting on whether London West Innovation District might be a better framing, and we've also had Heathrow Innovation District mooted as a possibility. So that will hopefully sort of settle down in the weeks ahead. But really to kind of help bring alive even further what an innovation district could mean in practice, we're going to turn to some of the businesses which are of course critical to helping get the sub-region back on its feet in the months ahead. Donata is one of the world's largest air services providers and a critical part of Heathrow's aviation supply chain. So, Alan, if I can bring you in, I wonder whether you can start just by telling us a little bit about Donata for anyone new to the business, and what attracted you to getting involved in shaping the early days of the Innovation District. Alan.
Donata, as you mentioned, is one of the world's largest air services providers. We provide a full spectrum of services across ground handling, cargo, travel, catering and travel retail services, and it's the catering and travel retail service sector that I join you from today. Prior to this COVID-19 crisis, We were working with 120 customers worldwide, delivering 117 million meals annually, and more specifically at Heathrow, which is our UK flagship operation for our culinary expertise and our catering division. We work with 29 international customers, serving over 26,000 flights annually. What attracted us to this is the innovation is going to be key to the recovery of the aviation sector after this crisis starts to subside. And who knows what trends and differences we will see within the aviation sector at this point. We can speculate that technology will supersede and replace certain levels of business travel. We can speculate that leisure travel will recover faster than business and scheduled travel, all of which places huge strain under how the aviation sector will recover and how businesses like ours would recover. And that innovation is going to be key for how we come out of this. As I mentioned before, Heathrow is very much our flagship operation. And from a culinary perspective, it's our innovation centre.
That's really interesting to hear, and sort of staggering numbers for what the sort of pre-pandemic sort of customer base and level of activity looked like. Now, in Seema's sort of opening sort of reflection, she of course flagged the growing importance of the green economy, and of course how the challenge of climate change has been fundamentally challenging, I suppose, aviation's license to operate. That in itself is driving lots of innovation. I just wonder in this area of food, do you find yourself having conversations now with colleagues around what low carbon food on flights might look and feel like?
Absolutely. The sustainability and the green agenda was absolutely number one on the list of every one of our airline customers prior to the first lockdown in March. We were working hand in hand with pretty much every one of our customers in terms of plastic free flights, reduction in single-use materials, addressing consumption patterns, addressing waste. And through the pandemic, the importance of improving our diet and obesity problems were highlighted as a key problem of increased risk towards COVID-19. And these two things have sort of dovetailed together to drive the agenda around airlines really wanting to see some real innovation around the ingredients that we work with. They're tasking us now with working with ingredients that have lower greenhouse gas emissions from farming and feeding and processing, transport, storage. They're looking for foods with the lowest carbon footprints, and they're looking really to really create this sort of healthy, green and sustainable product offering as we move forward. So it's very key to part of the recovery.
That all sounds like, I suppose, from an innovation district perspective, that if the innovation district can start to help you as a business identify innovative SMEs, bits of research going on in local universities that can help you answer some of those challenges and questions, that's potentially added value for you and your customers.
Absolutely. Dietary trends, health trends, and actually the supply chain that sits underneath it, because some of these ingredients and products, will have challenges around the supply chain as businesses recover from the pandemic.
Indeed. No, I think it's an absolutely fascinating area, and we look forward to coming back to it in much more detail with you in future conversations. But I want to bring in your colleague Adele now for a slightly different perspective on the challenges that are sort of being grappled with as the world changes at pace. And perhaps, Adele, you can start by giving us a flavour of a project you told me about a bit earlier called Gig Economy. What's that about, and what's sort of driving it internally?
Hello. So I work in the cargo and ground handling division, and we've had to look at how we can work differently and be agile. So the project that I am working on, the Gig Economy project, has been undertaken with the aim of achieving an agile and engaged workforce. So it speaks to the importance of a work-life balance. It's so vital to people at the moment. It also speaks to our customers' needs and their requests. currently we're fixed costs. We roster to our SLAs, and our customers want more flex in their pricing. They also want the reassurance that if they have a diverted aircraft, or there's a delay, or a travel corridor is removed, etc., that they're covered. So this model will enable us to respond quickly to changes in what's a very uncertain time at the moment. So we want to be lean and slick, but we don't want to jeopardize our quality or our service. So whilst people have been on furlough, they've needed to be their own bosses, for their household survival. They've had to engage in other work, working probably in a gig economy style already. So we know that our customers want flex. We also know that our staff are able to flex. So it's important that we look at that as a recovery model and going forward. So we're using technology every day in our lives. And to Seema's point, which is so important, is that our future workforce are in school and virtual technology, but they're virtually learning at the moment. That's important. It will be what they expect when they enter the workforce. So we need to be conscious of that, and we need to adapt our models to reflect that. So, the amount of apps you use. Sorry.
So if I can probe you further there, so you've you've got this kind of growing need for more flexibility, by the nature of the kind of crisis situation that you're navigating. You've got staff that also want more flexibility because actually if they're only working part-time with you, they're clearly keen to pick up work elsewhere, potentially. What sort of technology have you been turning to actually make that work in practice?
So currently, we roster shifts and staff are notified, and they look at, they log in, they look at their calendar and see what their life will look like for the next month or 2 or 3. The technology we're looking at is more employee-led. So you tell me when you can work, you tell me the hours you want to be present, and I'll put my back data in, which the back end data, which will say what I need, what my airline schedules are, and the two will marry. So I've got somebody that's opted to be there. They can do it. There's a whole piece around rules in working time directive and skill set. So obviously they'll need to be able to be skilled to do the actual role. But the technology we'll use will marry the two, and ping, they get a booking. So the app on their phone will let them know you've been booked, essentially. And it will feel almost a bit more like a gig, a consultancy basis. So the staff are there and it works for them, and it works for when they can be available. So when they turn up, they're happy to be there. Yeah,
no, that's I can see a lot of upside. I mean, clearly the gig economy is an area that has had, I suppose, a lot of different views expressed over the past few years, it is. I think the level of complexity and actually how you do gig work, I suppose, well, and ensure the sort of quality remains there, that needs fuller conversation, really, because there is a lot of upside, and I've certainly met as many workers, probably more workers that are happy about the flexibilities that come with it than those that perhaps have gotten a raw deal out of the approach.
Well, what's interesting is when we looked at some data, but in a pre-COVID world when we could all sit in a room together, we looked at the 2 reasons that people left our business. I mean, they don't often do it, but when they do, we looked at why. And it was because they had personal circumstances, or the hours of work didn't suit their needs. So really, this model speaks exactly to those 2 issues. So it enables people to work around their personal lives, so that should address those main challenges.
Makes flexible working kind of very, very, very real. Thank you so much for that, Adele. Lots of food for thought. We're going to keep all of our cogs turning as I turn to Phil Davies, my next guest from Magway, and a project and company I'm really excited to be introducing to talk at 10 viewers today. You're really doing something, I think, fundamentally very different, pioneering a new way to move freight. And before I put some questions your way, Phil, I think I'm just going to press play on a video that introduces the concept and sets the scene.
The progress of technology accelerates at incredible speed. Magway is at the cutting edge of this revolution. Having developed the most game-changing goods and parcels transport system in the world, utilising existing pipe technologies with our world-renowned experience of magnetic motors. A system that will travel beneath and above ground through a pipe network, connecting distribution centres to consolidation centres, targeting the markets for logistics, especially e-commerce, parcel and grocery delivery. With only half a second between carriages, efficiency and reliability is ensured. Easy integration to existing facilities, high bandwidth across the country, 24/7. To meet an ever-increasing urban demand. Autonomous transit, sustainable infrastructure with zero emissions, improved air quality, reduced congestion, less packaging, fewer road accidents. All weather, making better use of space. Creating opportunities for denser, more vertical residential and commercial development. Improved customer service, efficient, predictable, saving costs in operations, saving costs in capital investment. Creating a new delivery utility for the UK and for the rest of the world. Delivering better for a faster tomorrow. Magway.
The video has rolled, and that clearly is an illustration of your sort of endpoint, in a sense, the kind of national network that you're looking to build out over time. Today, you're with us from your test rig in northwest London. Do you want to give us a sort of bit of a flavour of kind of how the testing's going, and maybe then also come on to tell us a bit about the idea for a West London line?
Absolutely. So we're based in Wembley, northwest London. Behind me, you can see our operational demonstrator. So we've been building that out, actually, post the initial lockdown. So through the initial lockdown, we were simulating, we were ordering parts. In between lockdowns, we've built the system, and we're close to signing our first commercial pilot, which we will have signed in the first quarter of this year. And we've grown headcount over 50% through the lockdown. And we think, we've all of us have suffered, most probably the biggest societal and an economic shock in any of our lifetimes. And it's going to take collaboration and big, bold new ideas to address all of these challenges. And we're working with academic institutions, Imperial, Warwick Manufacturing Group, National Composite Centre, and we're offering apprenticeships. We're working with local schools and other companies. And we think that we can create new employment opportunities on both a local, national and international scale to address the challenges around the environment and also changing consumer habits.
And Phil, whilst clearly you've got the concept, you've got your early stage sort of test rigs underway, I imagine almost every day there are new problems or challenges that you're trying to solve in how you get the project to scale. And that, I imagine, is where, you've got a phenomenal network already, but you'll be looking for new partnerships as the project proceeds.
Absolutely. If you look at the speed and the scale of the challenge that we're facing, and then the speed in which people's habits have also evolved over a relatively short period of time, it is going to take a massive effort to address these issues, and thankfully, wherever you sit on the political divide, we're agreed that something needs to be done about the environment, and it's more than electric vehicles, it's more than autonomous vehicles. And we think we can interface with those sort of solutions, but to take vehicles off the road and to improve safety, to improve congestion, to improve the environment, we need to think differently.
And with that in mind, your sort of initial proposal is for a West London Magway line. I think we can bring up on screen a slide that illustrates the route that you're considering. Do you want to sort of briefly talk us through that route?
So we've got extensive engagement with various different commercial organisations, and what this enables us to do is to connect in excess of 400,000 households, over 1 million Londoners. This is the equivalent of a city the size of Amsterdam, and we're running it from Old Oakham Park Rural Development Corporation, OPDC, which is the largest regeneration site in the country. And they were one of our collaboration partners in our initial Innovate UK grant, and then taking it through past White City, Westfield, Olympia, where there's a major redevelopment, then through Earl's Court, which is again being redeveloped, down to the city. And this is through a number of nodes where we can provide a solution for both small and large organizations to get their goods and supplies efficiently and reliably to the end user, and then basically hand over to electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, for that final leg of the journey. And it's a two-way system, so goods can also go back into the network when we want to return those goods for whatever reason. But the system is available to businesses large and small.
It's a fantastic proposition. We may well have some follow-up questions for you there, Phil. But I'm now going to turn to Toby to get your perspective on the extraordinary insights and stories we've sort of had from some of our local sort of business partners this morning. But before I ask you for your general reflections, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the Central Research Laboratory for anyone who's new to the CRL, and why you decided to throw your hat in the ring and get involved in the innovation district? Toby.
Of course, thanks, Andrew. So Central Research Laboratory is an innovation hub. So we work with startups, scale-up, innovators, academics, universities, all around helping to incubate and foster and bring forward new inventions and new innovations, which is why hearing from people like Phil is so exciting to us. That sounds like an absolutely incredible project. And I guess just to give you a bit of background on us, the history of this area in West London and Hayes, where we're based, there's actually a rich history of innovation. So there was an original Central Research Laboratory, which is the R&D department for EMI, which was had a big presence in this location. They actually pressed the Rolling Stones records and Beatles records right in the building that I'm based. We're called in the shipping building, and they put a lot of that money into some really interesting innovation. And so the original CRL was responsible for things like the CAT scanner and airborne radar and stereo sound, and things that went into commercializing the television. So what we're doing today is trying to kind of build on that legacy and help today's innovators and entrepreneurs get started with their business. And really one of our parts of our mission right from the beginning was to be both a catalyst for those kind of new inventions, but also to be an engine for regeneration and job creation. It's part of why the CRL was set up and why we're really excited about this project. So we've been doing this for 5 years now, and last year was a really big year for us because we've started to scale what we're doing at the Central Research Laboratory into a national network of innovation hubs under our new brand called BusX. So we have new spaces opening across the UK, and our first location opened in Brighton, actually during the first lockdown of the pandemic last year. So that was a really interesting experience. But I think, tied into all those bits of the mission that I mentioned, this initiative is so exciting because there is this opportunity to harness the smartest minds in the country, which are, inventing these incredible new innovations, and connect them with some of the bigger industry players, with the universities, with people like Heathrow, to tackle some of those challenges that we'll be talking about in aviation, logistics, both for kind of job creation and economic benefit, but also tackling that big environmental challenge, which I think everyone here is really keen to make this initiative a solution for.
Now that's really helpful. What in practice does being home of the Innovation District mean? We saw the map earlier in the programme of as the CRL as the hub with all those spokes sort of pointing out. How do you see your role developing?
Well, obviously you've mentioned a few of the great partners that have signed up to kind of join this initiative already, and over the coming month we'll be working on bringing all those people together to develop the activity that's happening as part of this initiative. So initially, CRL will be kind of home to the delivery team working on this, but also home for partners to come together and develop initiatives. But hopefully very quickly kind of moving more to impact and to real projects. And CRL being that incubation space for some of these initiatives and innovations to get started, and also playing a role in helping put in place the right programs and support systems, which we've got lots of experience with, so that those partnerships turn into really powerful pilots, which turn into commercial contracts, which turn into kind of scalable commercial businesses, which have the impact that we all want.
Indeed, no, absolutely. That's ultimately what it's all about. Now, I'm going to turn back to Seema, and I suppose similar to my question to Toby just a sort of moment ago, as you've heard from Donata and Magway and the CRL, do you have sort of final reflections you'd like to share with us on the sort of on the potential that's bubbling away?
Well, thank you, Andrew. And I just have to say I found all of those contributions very inspiring and extremely thoughtful in terms of the context, ongoing lockdown that we perhaps didn't expect in the way we've had it. I think the reflections as well about how we're responding, I think with Donata and looking at choice in flexible working, in a sense, turning it, what happens in an organization slightly on its head to get the same outcome, but with a different process, is a sort of form of innovation that I think we're going to see driving improvements in other ways as well, that brings in the sort of people side as the technology side and the commercial side. I'll just pick up on a couple of points from Toby as well, just the idea that we create an environment that becomes a catalyst for innovations, because we know there's many good ideas and also many opportunities and imperatives. There are things we're going to have to do to change in order to be contributing to sort of net zero and the agenda that means for aviation. The extensive experience that's really come through today, and how we build a network that experience beyond the sort of in more ways the sort of transactional way. Some of it's happened before now, but improve the way we network and harness those opportunities together a bit sort of further up the innovation kind of chain, if you like, further upstream. And I think as well, just recognizing that there's a way through, just as we had Robert Courts, the minister, at conference, and we had parliamentarians from different parties as well, that the debates around future industrial strategy, what that's going to mean for skills and investment in different ways, what it will mean on the ground. These are very ripe areas of dialogue where, as we develop our thinking, we can feed into what has to be also a national strategy for regeneration and renewal, and use our links as well, the OECD, at sort of airport councils, international world, who will be looking at aviation internationally. Our ambition for the Silicon Valley of aviation, and that brand being, as a concept being known across the world, that this is the place where ideas can begin, can be developed and thrive and then be exported with returns for those that are here and invest. That's a great vision, and one that will have, I hope, a legacy for generations.
Absolutely, Seema. And of course, there's been, I think, from the outset, a very strong base of stakeholder support from across multiple sectors, as you highlighted in the quintuple model, Helix model at the start of the program. If there are Talk at 10 viewers sort of tuning in today that are kind of keen to get more involved, how should they plug in?
That's a great question, and I hope that we'll get that sign up. I know that the Innovation District policy statement that we had a number of organisations, perhaps 40 or so, that have signed up, perhaps some more now. There's the opportunity to sign up or get in touch with Amelia Grant at West London Business. And that will enable the sort of project and steering group teams to be in touch. We are going to have roundtables to take forward some of the areas for development and challenge, how we develop a program network, how we develop a sort of investor network, how we're going to sort of set up the governance, many of those sort of operational points, but also some of the ideas that we, the great opportunities. So to be involved in that with the ongoing stakeholder engagement we've got planned in the next few months, do get in touch and make sure your interest is logged, so that we can make sure that we stay in touch with you too.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to bring in my colleague James, who has been busy monitoring the YouTube live chat over the past hour or so for our first viewer question to the panel. James. Oh, you may be on mute, James. We're very, very quiet there. Still on.
Yes, there we are. Am I back now?
You're with us. You're with us. Go
Excellent.
for it.
So the first question comes in from Peter at Clear Sky, and he wants to know about the involvement of small businesses in the Innovation District. How do they fit in regarding the involvement, regarding their place in West London's economy?
Toby, do you want to sort of reflect on your experience of bringing small businesses into these processes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how familiar viewers are with the term open innovation, but we're a big believer in that as a kind of an approach to pushing forward new ideas. And this is really about creating those spaces to connect those small businesses who may be coming up with a new solution with opportunities in industry to plug in that solution and take it forward. So maybe just kind of a couple of examples that bring that to life. A company that was incubated here at CRL called Bots and Us, building service robots. At the beginning of last year, did a pilot actually in Heathrow with British Airways. So they've built an amazing service robot. And so if you were flying before lockdown, you may have seen Bo scooting around the airport, taking passengers to their gate, answering questions, and actually getting customer feedback. And for a small company like that, that was their kind of first big proof of concept. That was a very powerful way for them to go to investors and show that there's interest in the market. And actually, they've raised a very significant round of investment following that, and have scaled their team from about 2 people when they joined us to about 20 people now. So you can see how the value works on both sides there. So I think that's kind of one example, but there's lots of ways that startups plugging into solving challenges can be
that's really helpful, and I think great example of what can happen in practice. James, another question from our viewers.
Yes, we had another one come in this time to Phil, and it's focused on really how long before companies who are interested in your pipes can get out there and deliver their products to customers through them. How long will it be before we have Donata, for example, delivering low carbon meals through them?
So actually 10 days before initial lockdown, we were touring Heathrow and looking at how we could move goods. Or one of the part of the conversation was moving goods around the airport as well as into the airport. So that we need to pick up that conversation, and we anticipate putting our first commercial route in, signing that contract in Q1, and start building, in the next sort of 12 to 18 months. And the West London route, we're saying we have a time frame of 2024, 2025.
Very, very exciting. That's not so far off, really, given how long it usually takes us to build infrastructure in this country. James, perhaps for a final question to our panel.
Yes, I think the last question comes to Seema again. I see numerous people are very, very interested in getting involved in the Innovation District themselves, and a bit more of a jovial theme. Just asking if there a brainstorming session could be happening on the naming of the Innovation District as it planned.
Well, look, we're always up for ideas. So, I would suggest just sending through, any thoughts you have over to, Andrew or Amelia at West at sort of the, West London business. This is something we're creating together. So, and I'm sure that this will come up at the round tables that we'll do through the next few months as well.
Thank you, Seema. As always, the hour flies by all too quickly when we're having these fascinating and positive conversations, which is great for a change in these challenging times about the future that we're all working so hard to create. Thank you, as always, to our production team, Joel at Revolution Audio and James at West London Business. Thank you to my guest today, Seema Malhotra, MP for Feltham and Heston and co-chair of the West London Innovation District, Phil Davies, co-founder and commercial director of Magway, Toby Kress, managing director at the Central Research Laboratory and program director for BusX, Adele Charles, HR business partner at Donata, and Alan Hayes, Sales and Managed Services Director at Donata. As always, continue to share your thoughts with us and visit coronavirus.westlondon.com for the latest information and support. To speak to a member of the team about your concerns, call 020 8607 2500. And if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click on the button below the video stream to stay informed and show your support for our work. Talk at 10 will be back next month at 10 a.m. on Thursday the 25th of February. Until then, as always, we wish you, your friends, family and colleagues good health, and please maintain social distancing wherever possible to stay safe.